that was not the way to do it. Let's try that again. We dial 9 first, right?
Yeah.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your part. You are in the meeting now. You are the first participant. Please stand by. This meeting is being recorded.
Ready? Okay. Is Supervisor Crew dialed in? Okay. Pardon me? Okay, but we can start. Okay, let's call this meeting to order for the Amador County Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, August 10th, 2021. The board met in closed session, and actually Supervisor Crew will be present today on Zoom. So the board met in closed session, and item 2C, update was given. Item 3A, claim was denied, and item 3B, direction given. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, public matters not on the agenda. These are discussion items only. No action will be taken. Any person may address the board at this time upon any subject within the jurisdiction of the Amador County Board of Supervisors. However, any matter that requires action may be referred to staff and/or committee for a report and recommendation for possible action at a subsequent board meeting. Please note there is a three-minute time limit. Does anybody wish to address the board on matters not on the agenda?
Just a quick update or a quick note. Supervisor Crew, you are unmuted. We'll just leave you unmuted so you can participate however you should so choose.
Thank you.
Great. Please state your name too, please.
Good morning. My name is Sean Michael Krilatich. And good morning. I'm on our Board of Supervisors. Good morning. Water is at the center of all life, including the economy of our society. Water is also responsible for 96% of the Earth's heat cycle. In fact, even the smoke we have been breathing for the past several days is over 80% water vapor. Water is an undeniable, important foundation of our lives, and as such, we literally cannot afford to let local and regional water issues slip out of our view. To this end, Supervisor Jeff Brown deserves special recognition for standing up to the Amador Water Agency Board of Directors at the public hearing regarding the rate increase for AWA retail customers. AWA has chosen to divide the resistance to their agenda by separating the wholesale rate increases from the retail hikes. This is merely a political tactic, since the wholesale and retail rates are linked by the rate study which justifies the astronomical increases. This fact was brought clearly into the light at the end of the hearing by Jackson City Manager Yvonne Kimball's bold, impromptu presentation. Along with other concerned citizens and public officials, Kimball also pointed out that there are various technical issues with the AWA rate study that must be fixed before adoption of rate increases. In the end, the rate adjustment hearing may have served for nothing more than to expose the fact that AWA directors and their general manager are still attempting to hide information from their customers despite their words to the contrary. We, the people of Amador County, can only hope that civic leaders like Supervisor Brown will continue to stand up to AWA's bullying. In this rapidly changing world of global plans and agendas, it is of utmost importance that our local leaders stand up for our local interests. It should be known to everyone here that our county produces a significant amount of water for the rest of the state of California. AWA's water rights and contracts for approximately 20,000 acre-feet of water represent less than 10% of the water that originates in our county on an average year. This 20,000 acre-feet of water is ours to use as we see fit to attain the quality of life and scale of economy that we choose here in Amador County. Currently, some 14,000 acre-feet per year of water assigned to Amador is allowed to flow downstream into Pardee Reservoir. From there, On dry years such as this one, it is sucked through 3 massive pipes to the Bay Area, where it is used to bolster the economy and quality of life of East Bay residents. So you might be asking, how much do they pay for the privilege of using 2/3 of Amador's water on top of their own water rights and contracts? The answer is absolutely nothing. Unfortunately, AWA has not made this fact known, and many of our residents believe that the water rate increase is due to the drought. Other residents believe that when we conserve water here in Amador, we are doing our part for the environment. But in actuality, that water is not conserved. It is piped to the East Bay and used to further enrich the wealthiest economy in the state. At the same time, the removal of water from Amador is impoverishing our community. It's time to tell AWA, we won't pay your inflated price for water. Even if you need the funds to pay off debt, accrue more debt, and fix aging infrastructure, you certainly have no right to take those funds from us on the basis of our water consumption. If we really cannot find a way around the massive increase in water rates, then Amador residents should be able to use as much water as our leadership and citizens desire. Maybe it's time to build a water park in Amador. After all, there are a half dozen operating in the Bay Area with water sourced from Amador County. The Amador Water Agency directors have unanimously approved the highest water rates in the country, but they have not told us the whole story about our water. The directors and management would do well to recognize that they are a public agency and as such must present the full story in a timely fashion. Now is the time to defend our local resources. In this county of origin, we should at least have the right to choose how we use 10% of the water that originates here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public matters not on the agenda?
One thing, this is Supervisor Netter. One thing I will say, I do agree with Mr. Krelotich. I mean, it's one thing if they got to raise the rates, but if they got to do it, at least let you have some water. I'd say he's very correct on that. Not saying I agree with the rate increase, but if they're going to do it, say, hey, we're going to raise the rates, but use all the water you want to use.
Ready?
Yes.
I want to talk briefly about water as well.
Okay.
But my question is, and I guess my legal opinion clashes with county councils again. I contend that we would be better served, well served by suing the Regional Water Quality Management Board. Because they continuously ignore and slap us in the face and say, we're going to just do whatever we like, we don't care, and District 2 residents get caught up in this trap. An article in the Ledger Dispatch, Water Board green lights contamination. Now, how much more direct could that be to tell us that is exactly what they're doing? They don't care about us. They don't care about Richard's constituents or others that live in Amador County. County Council says it would do no good. It's like a district attorney giving different directions or something to that effect. I say, if we don't sue them, how the hell do we know? If you sue them, at least they have to respond. And to me, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's a no-brainer. Why don't we sue them and see what comes out of it? Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Well, we do have a case, correct?
The county is suing Mule Creek and CDCR, but the Regional Water Quality Control Board is not a defendant in that case.
Okay, all right. Thanks. Any other public comment? Anybody on Zoom wishes to speak? Okay, all right. Well, moving on from public matters, approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
So we have a motion from Supervisor Forster and a second by Supervisor Brown to approve the agenda as is. Do we need to do a roll call vote because of, yeah, okay. Could you do that, Jennifer, please?
Supervisor Onetto?
Aye.
Supervisor Forster?
Aye.
Chairman Axe?
Aye.
Supervisor Crew? Oh, I think he muted himself again. Let's see.
We're unmuting you, Supervisor.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And Supervisor Brown?
Yes.
Okay, approval of items on the consent agenda.
So move.
So we have a motion from Supervisor
Second.
Brown, second from Supervisor Onetto to approve the consent agenda as is. Would the board clerk call the vote?
Supervisor Onetto?
Aye.
Supervisor Forster?
Aye.
Chairman Axe?
Aye.
Supervisor Crew?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Yes.
Okay, so we're moving on to the regular agenda now. Item 5A, which is update by Amador County Health Officer Dr. Rita Kerr on the COVID-19 situation in Amador County. And I see her up there. Are we gonna put her on the big screen or?
Good morning.
Hold on just a second. Morning.
Okay, I'm glad you can hear me.
Yeah, we're gonna make you the center of attention here.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Dr. Kerr?
Okay, good morning, Supervisors, Chairman Axe, and Amador County. Here to give you my periodic update to the Amador County Board of Supervisors on the COVID-19 situation. As of last evening, to date, 2,183 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Amador County residents, excluding Mule Creek State Prison inmates. 949 Amador County resident cases year to date since January 1st, which is an increase of 227 since my last report to the board 2 weeks ago. To date, 181 residents of Amador County have known to have required hospitalization because of COVID-19, and that's an increase of 19 since 2 weeks ago. 14 COVID patients are currently in Sutter Amador Hospital. Of those, 11 are Amador County residents and 3 who reside elsewhere. Also, we know of 1 Amador County resident who is hospitalized out of county. Of all those individuals, only 1 person in the hospital was fully vaccinated, and that person has underlying immune compromise. During the past 2 weeks, 2 unvaccinated patients died of COVID at Sutter Amador Hospital. Neither of those were Amador County residents, so they will not hit our death count. However, 1 Amador County resident died of COVID at another hospital in another county, and that person was also unvaccinated. So that brings the total to date of 40, an increase of 1 since 2 weeks ago, Amador County residents, and 9 Mule Creek State Prison inmates who have died of COVID-19. Public Health expresses our sincere sympathy to everyone who has lost a loved one to COVID-19. The spike in cases in Amador County continues, as well as in the rest of the state and most of the nation. Looking back, the week of July 4th through 10th, Amador County tallied 12 case episodes. The following week, 36 case episodes, then up to 62. The week of July 25th through the 31st, 93 case episodes. And for the last complete week, August 1st through 7th, we've already got 105 case episodes. And that number will increase as some people wait a few days after symptoms to get tested, and then the lab results come in. The active case count for Amador County residents as of last evening is 176, which is 114 more active cases than 2 weeks ago. The Delta variant is the dominant strain circulating in the United States, including in Amador County. All but one of the Amador County samples that has been sequenced since the beginning of July has been the Delta variant. Delta is much more transmissible than prior strains of the novel coronavirus. Compared to the strains that were circulating last summer, Studies show that persons infected with Delta variant become contagious 2 days sooner after their exposure and have a viral load 1,000 times greater in their respiratory tract that makes them much more contagious. Amador contact tracing currently shows widespread community transmission. About 70% of confirmed cases report knowing who they were exposed to, other COVID positive people, be it family members, friends, or coworkers. Another 20% report knowing that they were at a place where known cases have been, but were unsure who exactly may have exposed them. And the remaining 10% do not know where or when they may have been exposed to COVID-19. Being fully vaccinated lowers the risk of infection after exposure, but vaccine breakthrough cases have been occurring given the widespread community transmission, more so with the Delta variant. During the month of July, 16.4% of cases in Amador occurred in fully vaccinated people. For the first 9 days of August, 21.2% were fully vaccinated cases. Generally, those who become infected after vaccination have milder illness. Unvaccinated persons are much more likely to experience more severe illness, including hospitalization and death. Older individuals and those with conditions that impair their immune response are more likely to have significant breakthrough illness. On July 27th, the CDC updated recommendations for fully vaccinated people, including in areas with high levels of community transmission, which includes Amador County, everyone should wear a mask indoors, in public places, and outdoors when they're in crowds where social distance cannot be maintained. After a close contact exposure to a confirmed or suspected COVID-19 case, fully vaccinated persons still do not need to quarantine as long as they remain without symptoms, but they are advised to get tested 3 to 5 days after the exposure and wear a mask around others for 14 days, especially when they're indoor in public places. Unvaccinated persons are required to be wearing a mask indoors when in public and are also recommended outdoors when in crowds. For COVID-19 vaccine update for the county, at this point, over 35,600 doses have been administered to date to persons who live here in Amador County. 65.1% of Amador County residents aged 12 and over have had at least one dose of vaccine, and over 16,000 Amador residents over age 12 are fully vaccinated, with another 5,000 or so having had their first dose of a 2-dose vaccine series. Again, I will remind you that it's very important to complete the second dose of the 2-dose series to have the most possible protection against variant strains. And even if you're outside the recommended time window to get that second dose, you do not need to restart the series, you just need to complete it. To do so, Public Health is continuing to hold vaccination clinics. Pop-up walk-in outreach clinics are being held at various places in the community several times a week. We are offering the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for those 18 and over, and the Pfizer vaccine for ages 12 and over who have assigned parental or guardian consent. And there's a clinic happening today in Ione at the Oaks on Jackson Valley Road between 10 a.m. and noon. Again, no appointment necessary, just go there and speak with the staff and get your vaccine. On Thursday, there will be another pop-up clinic at the Sutter Terrace Mobile Home Park in Sutter Creek from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. A calendar showing where and when pop-up vaccine clinics are taking place is posted on the amadorgov.org website. If you click on the COVID-19 red banner at the top and then on the vaccination tab on the left side of the page, you will see that calendar. Homebound individuals may call to schedule a nurse home visit to be vaccinated by calling Public Health at 209-223-6407. And that same number can be used to schedule an appointment at any of the routine immunization clinics that Public Health holds the first and third Tuesday of every month in the afternoon call 209-223-6407 for an appointment slot at one of those clinics. There's also a lot of other places in the community that vaccine can be accessed, including clinics for Sutter Health, WellSpace, and the MECT Clinic. Sutter Amador Hospital has now begun offering COVID vaccination to all patients upon discharge. And patients of Kaiser, the VA, or other health systems will likely be able to access vaccine through their own providers. Also, the 4 pharmacies in Amador County that are listed on the vaccines.gov website can be searched for product type, availability, and appointment times. That's CVS, Safeway, Walgreens, and Walmart. As far as testing goes, the no-cost OptumServe testing site remains at the back entrance of the Health and Human Services building off Lower Ridge Road. And because higher demand for testing has come up in the past couple of weeks, the hours have increased back to 12-hour days. So testing is now available still on Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday from 7 a.m. all the way till 7 p.m. Usually you'll drive up, park at the cones, and staff will assist you. However, when weather or smoky air conditions make outdoor service difficult, the testing gets moved indoors to Suite 500 at the HHS building. So please bring a mask with you in case you need to go indoors. Adults and children can be tested with results within 2 to 3 days. And because of the increase in testing volume, the team will honor pre-registered individuals first and give them priority service. Those who walk up, if there is a long line, may be asked to come back later when there are fewer appointments scheduled. To pre-register, go to lhi.care online or call 1-888-634-1123. Immunity through vaccination slows the spread and lessens the emergence of variant strains of the virus. Fully vaccinated persons have good protection against variants. All 3 available COVID vaccines are demonstrating the ability to prevent severe illness. When the virus cannot find a susceptible host to multiply in, it is less likely that more significant variant mutations will emerge. Get vaccinated if you haven't already to protect yourself, your family and loved ones, and our entire community. Given the increasing level of community transmission, everyone is advised to wear a mask indoors when in public, regardless of vaccination status. Avoid crowds and poorly ventilated indoor spaces. It is particularly important that anyone who feels ill, even with mild symptoms, stay home, especially if you're waiting for COVID-19 test results. Answer the call from public health if you test positive so that we can assist you and your loved ones. If you don't feel great, please isolate. I'd be happy to address any questions at this point.
Any questions from the board here? Supervisor Neto?
Yeah, I have a question, Dr. Kerr. Looking at your update, I've never seen any numbers on adverse reactions. Has there been any adverse reactions to the jab?
To the vaccines, we have had instances of immediate allergic reactions in our clinics, including sometimes itching, and sometimes people report a feeling of numbness near the injection site. We have not had to deploy the EpiPen in our vaccine clinics to this point. We have had a couple people who have complained of things like chest pain and have been transported to the hospital for further evaluation. We report all adverse reactions to the vaccine adverse events reporting system. And we also encourage everyone who gets vaccinated to sign up for an app called VSafe, where you get an outbound text message and, the day after, 2 days after, a week after, and they continue to follow you out for 6 weeks and several months after to ask what adverse reactions anyone may have had. It's a data collection program just so that we can study these vaccines and be very on top of what's happening. Yes, adverse reactions are known. At this point, all the analysis has concluded that the benefit of vaccination far outweighs the risk of getting COVID with all the potential complications from the virus.
Yeah, it'd be, as far as the people have probably, I don't know what would be the correct term, maybe severe reactions, it'd be nice to have that number on our update. And also, what are the flu statistics? I guess COVID's kind of a flu basically too, but I mean, I'd be really curious to see what our flu numbers look like too, like the, what you call maybe the normal flu.
Sure.
How many cases we've had, kind of almost like historical rundown last 5 years,
Sure.
compared to what we have now.
I can give you kind of a ballpark on that. We had relatively severe flu seasons. The flu season traditionally runs, they keep the tally October 1st through May 1st. Flu is present, but at very low levels in the Northern Hemisphere during these later spring and summer months. We had relatively severe flu seasons in the 2017-2018 flu season, and then again in the 2018-2019 flu season. And even those first few months of the 2019-2020 season were pretty active for influenza. Once people started staying home and not mixing, the latter part of the 2020, the months of spring 2020 saw a rapid drop off in influenza cases. The 2021 season was very mild nationwide. There were really very few, and they were only for a few weeks at a time, bouts of widespread influenza transmission activity in a couple of states in the Midwest. California really never even reached that widespread level for all of last year. The highest we reached was sporadic transmission. And that is because people were distancing and wearing masks. Influenza, like COVID, is a respiratory virus that gets transmitted from person to person via droplets and aerosols.
You know, I would love to see the numbers of people that died last 5 years from just regular flus.
Okay, Supervisor,
Yes, Frank?
This is not seasonal flu, okay? Any other
I
questions from the
understand
board?
that, Frank.
Any other questions from the board? I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Kerr,
I wasn't quite done, if you don't mind.
okay.
Supervisor, you're just giving misinformation. This is not seasonal flu.
I never said it was. I asked her for the numbers.
Okay, she got that information. She doesn't have it right now. She'll get it to you.
I just wanted to make sure she'd understood it as requesting that. That's all I was asking.
Okay.
All right.
Supervisor Forrester.
Thank you. Dr. Kerr, you said in your report, immunity through vaccination slows the spread and lessens the emergence of variant strains of the virus. Again, on the Delta variant, can you test for that? But on new, are we seeing any other strains of the virus at this point? And can you test and verify for them?
Yes. So again, a random sample is, we are not testing every positive case for which variant it is at this point. There's just not enough capacity to do that very specialized type of work, which is only happening in some university laboratory and public health laboratory settings. So what's happening now is a random sampling of community cases are picked out and sent up for whole genome sequence testing. And then we are really focusing on hospitalized patients, particularly those that end up in critical care settings, and vaccine breakthrough patients who are hospitalized for whole genome sequencing. We have seen only Delta, with the exception of one person who had I'll call it a garden variety, basically an older generation of the virus that is not a variant of interest or a variant of concern because it has not shown any vaccine breakthrough capability or resistance to any of our antibody treatments or anything like that. We are absolutely doing surveillance for emerging variants at a local, state, regional, and national level. So some of the Greek letters that we're watching for, you may have seen in the news, are Lambda. We have not seen any of that here locally or regionally. The Iota, which we have not seen either. The Gamma strain has been seen in Northern California, but none in Amador County. And the Beta strain, we saw some in the region back in, I'm thinking it was May, but not lately. So Delta is it right now. 93% of sequences in the state over the last full week were Delta. And decreasing levels of the Alpha and I have that summary here somewhere. Alpha and one of the Gamma are both decreasing, and Delta's going up. It's taking over basically.
So is it reasonable then that, can you assume that anyone vaccinated would have a higher tolerance if they are affected by any of these strains?
They are less likely to get infected in the first place. The case rate among unvaccinated people is statewide is currently 33 per 100,000. The case rate among vaccinated is 7 per 100,000. So much, much less. It is being studied and is likely that the vaccinated have a lower peak viral load. If they are contagious to others, they would be contagious for a shorter period of time because their immune system is going to get on top of it more quickly by allowing the virus to make fewer copies of itself. That's why the less emergent of variant strains. The more time this virus can make copies of itself, the more likely a mutation will occur, which is a significant variant.
All right, thank you.
Any other
You're
board
welcome.
questions? Supervisor Crew, do you have any questions?
No, I was just listening along. The numbers are staggering.
Yeah. I have a
Dr.
couple
Curl, I
questions.
did have one, excuse me, Mr. Chair. You
Yep.
said that vaccinations have picked up.
Yes.
Do you have a empirical number or percentage? Are they up 30%, 10%?
Oh, I didn't do the calculation, but I can tell you that on the snapshot that comes out every Monday evening, we had over 300 doses administered to Amador County residents in the last week. And probably a month ago, we were closer to 50 doses in a week. So that's a significant increase.
Yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Dr. Kerr, I have a few questions. What is the age group of those that are hospitalized now? It's much younger, correct?
It is definitely younger. I can look at yesterday's census, and the youngest person in the hospital is 31 and on a ventilator. The oldest person in the hospital, I believe, is 90, and that is the person who is a vaccine breakthrough case who has underlying kidney disease. So that tells you the story.
How many ICU beds are available at Sutter Amador?
I believe there are 4 patients in the ICU currently, 3 of whom are COVID patients. They have a total of 6 ICU beds there at the hospital, and they can flex some of their PCU, it's like a step down unit, into ICU capacity if need be.
Okay, so we're all right as far as ICU beds.
There are beds available. The challenge all over the place is keeping those beds staffed at this point.
Right. I was looking at the data around the state and around the nation. I mean, some states where they've completely thrown caution to the wind, the governors are pretty much out of their mind. They're pretty much melting down their emergency rooms. And maybe that's something that we should report on so the public understands just how important this is, not only for our economy to get back, but also to keep from crashing our healthcare system.
Our emergency room was extremely busy over the weekend, and I really want to give many thanks to all those who are working on the front lines there. Been in touch with them all weekend. Of course, they're dealing with smoky conditions. We're getting air scrubbers, and they're putting air scrubbers in their building as well to keep their environment safe, and just seeing a lot of patients. Met with the emergency room crew in the morning yesterday, and then with the hospital leadership team in the afternoon, and really keeping a close eye on the situation. But yes, absolutely, this surge is putting strain on our hospital resources.
Okay. Maybe that should be noted in your future updates. Do we know how many who have attended the fair seem to be coming down with symptoms? And the reason why I'm asking, this was primarily an outdoor event, and have we seen a change in indoors versus outdoors?
We have certainly been asking people where they've been or if they've been to any large events in the 2 weeks prior to getting ill. And a fair number of the cases from the last couple of weeks have said they were at the fair. Whether or not that's exactly where they were exposed is difficult to tease out. I will remind you that the fair is not only an outdoor event, there are quite a few indoor buildings there and people who stay in those buildings for a fair amount of time when they're visiting. So in those settings, it was absolutely recommended that people, especially the unvaccinated, be wearing masks. And also, as I mentioned, crowded outdoor settings, when you're sitting shoulder to shoulder with somebody, even outdoors for a prolonged period of time, is an opportunity for transmission, even though it is well documented that outdoors is safer than indoors.
Okay, thank you. Any other board questions? Any questions from the public? Any Zoomers?
No.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank you for your presentation today, Dr. Kerr, and thanks for all the work you and your department's been doing in this crisis situation, and keep up the good work, and we look forward to better numbers in the future.
We're hoping so. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to item 5B, which is an update on library activities over the past fiscal year and future activities and programs. And I believe our chief librarian is going to speak on that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I wanted to come and give you a short report on the library since I haven't been here in a while. And to let you know that despite COVID, the library has remained an extremely valuable and important resource to the community. The fact that we were able to pivot quickly meant that we could continue offering library services even though they were in a different manner than people are used to, instead of the physical services that is in the buildings themselves. We were able to answer questions over the phone, virtually, and we provided outside pickup of library material for the majority of the time that we were not open to the public. Staff also assisted patrons with placing holds, navigating the catalog, online and digital resources, as well as helping patrons download to their devices. And despite reduced services during the fiscal 2021, that is primarily outside pickup, we still saw 30,734 checkouts, 178 new library patrons. We answered 2,389 questions, and we checked out, actually more than doubled, ebook checkouts with 14,391. That's in addition to the physical checkouts. We had Link Plus loans, that is to other libraries, 1,934, and people requested and borrowed from Link Plus 4,239 items. Zip books purchased for patrons were 287. So pretty substantial, even though we weren't able to provide in-person service at the time. And although in-person programming has been on hold due to the pandemic, the library held book club meetings via Zoom, and we began to offer virtual story times and craft times on library's Facebook page in January. The virtual programs held were 61 children's programs, and there were 11,048 people reached and 1,810 views. 10 book club meetings were held with 47 people attending. The library's partner, one of our library partners, First Five, also provided craft kits to hand out to children during our summer reading program, which we did hold, and we handed out reading logs, library crafts, activities, and reading incentives. And we also offered Beanstack, which is a virtual library reading program. The patrons can register to use this program, and then they can track their reading by earning badges as they complete each reading challenge. During 2020, we had 37 participants, which again is pretty remarkable since this is the first time that we had offered this. The State Library CARES Act funding increased the number of online resources the library offered by 11, making many databases available for students and their parents to utilize remotely. And some of the vendors that provided these databases through the State Library were Grolier, Scholastic, World Book, and Gale. Also provided was BrainFuse Job Now and Vet Now, and that allows people to connect with an expert to learn more about eligible VA benefits and community resources, along with job and career coaching. We were able to expand some of our ebook resources through Hoopla by adding Hoopla Flex, which features more of the bestsellers for borrowing, and this was also done with CARES Act funding. The literacy program coordinator held regular Zoom and phone meetings with learners covering such areas as GED preparation, citizenship test preparation, as well as digital literacy. She saw a total of 57 learners. During this time, 26 were new and 31 were returning. Currently, and some of our future activities, the library has just installed wireless printing at the main library. So this service gives patrons the ability to print from a mobile device, tablet, or laptop while in the library, and this service is available at the main library in Jackson. And funding for this new service also came from CARES Act monies, and also provided through the CARES Act funding through the state library. We were able to purchase additional Chromebooks. So the library is expanding our Chromebook lending service. Chromebooks will be available at all library locations. They'll be able to be taken out for 3 weeks with no renewals, and patrons who would like to borrow a Chromebook will need to have a library card with no outstanding fines over $5. I'm sure you've all heard the recent approval of the state budget. Well, it included $500 million for our California libraries. And what does this mean for Amador County? Well, for two of our most precious programs, that is the Zip Book program, and for those who are unfamiliar with this program, the library has been participating in it since 2013, and it was originally designed for rural libraries. And the object of this program was to provide books that the library did not have access to, kind of like an interlibrary loan service, but much faster and less expensively. And what this allows is that people can request that the library purchase a particular book that they're interested in that we do not have in our collection. The funding for this program is provided through the state library, and the amount that we normally receive is $6,000. Without this additional $500 million, there was a chance that we were going to lose the ability to provide this program. We've seen a real uptick in the use of this program, and for the library, it's also meant that those books that are purchased for someone are purchased through Amazon. They're delivered directly to the individual at their home. They read the book. When they're finished reading it, they bring it back to the library, and we add it to the collection. During the time that we've been participating in this program, we have added 3,048 books to the library. And again, this is things that the community is asking us to get for them. So in a way, they're also participating in the collection development. We also participate in Link Plus, and Link Plus, like Zip Books, is a resource program. And in this case, Link Plus, we share resources with a little bit over 64 libraries throughout the state of California. And the funding for this comes through the California's Services Board, and that funding had been cut in half last year, and thankfully through this budget we are getting that money returned, and it means that we can continue with this service. The money that we get for this program comes through our membership in 4999 Cooperative. Also in this particular funding, there are a number of grant opportunities that I'm looking at as well going forward. So, any questions?
Any board questions?
Not really a question, but I would love you to forward me your notes there so I have that data, because man, you just threw a lot of data at us.
Sure.
I
Sure, and
appreciate it.
I had brought little packets for all of you, but I apparently forgot them in my office, so I will bring them by. I'm coming by tomorrow, so I'll bring them by and drop them off to them.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one question, like, the main branch library in Jackson, is it fully open?
Yes, we are. We have been since June 18th.
What's your capacity now? Do you know roughly?
I don't know what the actual capacity of the building is, to be honest with you, but we've been fully open.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yes, I had the same comment as Supervisor Brown. Mine's a little more timely since I give a radio report on it, but I think I got enough tidbits to put in there.
Okay. All right. Any other questions that come up, and just email me?
I have a couple of questions here. So these Chromebooks, how has that worked out? You're loaning them out. Do they come back kind of beat up, or are they in good shape?
No, usually in good shape. We've had a couple of incidents where someone didn't return one. But generally speaking, people are just so thankful to be able to have access to this that they.
Are these mainly adults that are checking it out, or
Yes.
is it kids, or?
No children as yet. I think the schools were providing Chromebooks. There were several that were used in a special program that someone was offering. They partnered with the library. It was to assist burgeoning authors, and it was a writing program that began prior to the pandemic, and then kind of continued through the pandemic time, and they borrowed several of the Chromebooks for that program.
Okay, Supervisor Crew, did you have any comments, questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. Laura, as always, just a lot of work you do and your staff with, it's amazing, those numbers. I would like to have a copy of those too. If you maybe send it to Jennifer, copy your notes, we could all get it.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Are there?
Mr. Chairman, this is Supervisor Brown. One thing, I had a good conversation with the principal up at Pioneer Elementary School, and during this pandemic, they were able to give, anybody who did not have access to a computer at home, they were able to get Chromebooks and other things so that all the students had access. Plus, any of the students that did not have internet were also allowed, or loaned a hotspot, and so they could have internet that way.
Oh, that's great.
One more question.
Go ahead.
Laura, is there parity with all of the libraries as far as allocation of equipment? My own library, it's somewhat isolated, but it gets a lot of use down there by people from the area.
Yes, and every location is receiving Chromebooks. And yes, I think you had asked me a question similar the last time that I was here during the budget process, and we had just replaced all of the staff computers, and in fact, Ione just received a new copy machine and a new printer.
Okay, I just want to make sure that
Yes.
all of their IT capabilities are up to the same level as any other library.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because that is one of the grant opportunities that I'm looking at, because the branches do need to have their Wi-Fi service brought up a bit, because it can really slow down, especially Ione and Plymouth branches. So that is something that I'm looking at going forward.
Yeah, because some of the people down there, I know that's their only opportunity to connect on the internet. Since they don't have it, they can't afford it personally.
That's right. That's true.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Laura. Any other board questions or comments, or any Zoomers? No, okay. Well, thanks so much for your presentation, Laura, and all the work that you and your staff are doing at all the branches, and thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, item 5C, this is the Juvenile Justice Realignment Block Grant, and I believe our Chief Probation Officer, Mark Bonini, is going to speak on this.
Mark Benini, the Chief Probation Officer for Amador County. Good morning, Supervisor Axe and
Morning.
the rest of the board and CEO Wiley. I'm here at the request, really, of CAO Wiley to brief the board in relation to the DJJ, or Juvenile Justice Realignment Block Grant, specifically SBA 23, that the governor signed September of 2020. And really, and I didn't include it in what was sent over for the agendized item, what it comes down to today, and it is due August 16th, should the board choose to sign it, is a attestation that was emailed to the CAO, myself, and others at the county level from the state controller regarding attesting basically that we'll follow the law. I found this to be a bit of a slap in the face to not only myself being a sworn peace officer, but to all of you elected officials that we're going to attest to following the law. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But to give you a little background, the governor, he did sign this bill in September 2020, but it really goes back beyond that. And many years ago, and I know Supervisor Forrester has been involved with DJJ, which is the California Department of Corrections Division of Juvenile Justice. It's the juvenile side of the prison system at the state level. Years ago, it was the Youth Authority, California Youth Authority, but has evolved and currently in its iteration is called shorthand DJJ. Every year that it comes up that they want to close, and when I say they, the state, the legislature wants to close DJJ, the Chief Probation Officers of California have been opposed to that. And we continue to be opposed to that. And I was opposed to it in this most recent challenge and ultimate closing of DJJ. That said, in mid-2020, the governor, at the end of 2019 and early 2020, the governor decided that he wanted to move DJJ, which was currently under the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, under State Health and Human Services. Shortly thereafter, sometime in mid-2020, the governor realized that moving DJJ under state HHS simply wasn't going to work. So what he decided to do was look at realigning the DJJ piece of the state prison system back to counties. So in September 2020, governor signs this bill. The Chief Probation Officers of California were against it, and many other county entities, because we realized that there's a place at the state level where juvenile offenders have risk and needs so high that the counties can't deal with them. We need a secure facility with many programs that many times are beyond what we can provide to house these individuals in the hopes of rehabilitating them before they reach the age of maximum detention or the age of jurisdiction where they're no longer under the jurisdiction of the juvenile court. So what you have before you ultimately is a memo that I prepared for you that outlines SBA 23. And really the highlights here come down to the formation that we have to have of a juvenile justice coordinating council to come up with a plan that's given and approved by the board by January 1 of 2022. It calls out who is to be on that committee. I did include some funding outlined on the back or page 2 of that memo. And really what it comes down to for Amador County is a $250,000 appropriation to us that comes to the board, really to be earmarked for those juveniles that can no longer go to DJJ. Just for your information, we send about one juvenile every 10 years or so to DJJ in the past. So we're really looking at that one kid that is beyond our abilities to deal with that individual locally, where we had sent them to the state in the past. Typically, that juvenile makes up a sex offender, is the type of commitment that we've sent those juveniles there in the past. Not that that's what will happen in the future, just to give you an idea of our county's use of DJJ from the past. So ultimately, as things have played out, and really through in my opinion, what's a bit of a lack of leadership at the state level when it comes to such an important decision to realign an important piece of the criminal justice system. This money that is coming, and again, it's outlined in your memo, although for Amador County, relatively small from on the statewide level, and it builds every year, it gets quite big. So as you would imagine, there's many social justice groups out there. There's many juvenile law offices out there that want a chance at getting at this funding for purposes that, yes, may be for the betterment of juveniles and juvenile justice, but somewhat or sometimes that's suspect. So as things played out, and due to that lack of leadership, I believe at the state level, directing others and really announcing that it's county probation departments that deal with these juvenile populations. When I think it was in 1998 and 1999, the DJJ population was about 12,000 kids. Currently, before DJJ closed, there was about 800 there. Why do you think we had such a reduction in the juvenile population that's being held at the state level? It's because of the work that county probation departments do throughout the state to deal with kids at the local level. So having our governor stand up and say, this money is coming down to the counties through the Board of Supervisors to deal with these kids because we're realigning that population really would have staved off much of the headaches and things that have occurred and the things that chief probation officers continue to have to deal with on a daily basis, rather than concentrating on how are we going to build programs, how are we going to build housing to deal with these kids that are now realigned to us. So we constantly have to stave off these other groups out there because we have no leadership coming down from the state as to how this money is going to be spent and what's going to occur. Sure, it's outlined in the bill, but for whatever reason, it's being called into question. And that comes down to a lawsuit that was filed on July 27th by one of the juvenile law firms out of, I believe it was out of the Bay Area, asking for an injunction against the state controller funding, sending this money to the counties. So that ultimately was heard 2 days later, and the judge denied that. So the funding has since hit Amador County's account on August 2nd. So what was outlined here has hit our account, and we'll continue to move forward. And really, this attestment that came out, or attestation that came out in an email by the state controller to county chief administrative officers, again, basically says that we're supposed to attest to following the law. Now, it's my inclination that they were guessing that this lawsuit was coming, and they wanted to have some way to show that counties were going to follow the law, and this lawsuit was frivolous. That may be the case, but it's created a whole lot of work on my end and our end and other chiefs throughout the state in having to deal with this attestation. In my opinion, I'm not going to sign it unless one of you, twist my arm and tell me I have to sign it. The money's coming to the board. My suggestion is you don't sign it because there's nothing in the law that says, A, that we have to, and B, that would make the funding not come to us either this year, which it already came, or even in future years.
So is this a testament? Is this a resolution we're supposed to sign or approve, or what?
No, I did bring one copy with me, and I don't know if the CEO has.
You want to go on and read it? It's very short, but it just says, I swear under the penalty of perjury that we're following all of these things. It's stuff that's set in law already. Right. There's no basis for them to require this.
Didn't we already swear an oath to uphold the law? So
exactly. That's I think Mark's point. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we should add the state controller's name to it and send it back and say, we'll sign it if you sign it, buddy.
I sent, so they actually sent a different one in advance of that one, wanting to know whether we were intending to sign that one. And I sent back a thing, and I copied the chairman on it that said we intend to follow the law.
Okay, so for this year we have the funding in the amount of $250,000, and that's going to cover these extreme cases.
Correct. The funding did come, but again, the piece of this, and again, it's in law, so we're going to follow what needs to be done. Is that I have to have a plan done with my criminal justice partners and community members at large that will come to the board. and it will take into consideration our past use of DJJ, what we foresee as our future use and the things that we need. But there's so much in flux right now. Many of these people wanted our plan or the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council subcommittee to already be formed, and there's just no need for that haste, in my opinion. Number one, we're not high users of DJJ. Number two, I don't know how this is all going to play out. There's a work group between CSAC, the California Association of County Executive Officers, and CPOC to try to come up with some best practices or work group guidelines or principles for us to follow in order to address this population locally. So it's so early in the process. Am I going to be able to direct contract with counties for juvenile detention? Currently, like I do, but are they going to have those secure beds or the secure track beds that I need under this realignment? Is there going to be a consortium of the chief probation officers of California that'll deal with counties as to who's going to offer what? And we're going to have, let's say in Alameda County, there's going to be a good sex offender program. In Fresno County, there's going to be a good program to combat gang type of behavior. So it's so early, I don't know what it's going to look like. And it just is, at this point, it's a hasty decision to try to get things together and get it moving, when really my recommendation when I get the council together is going to be simply to hold those funds in some sort of trust account, let them build, because I don't know what the cost is going to be down the road. And maybe that'll be defined before January 1. I don't believe so, because again, chiefs are taking their time to deal with these other issues rather than the stuff, the nuts and bolts that they really need to deal with. So keep it in trust, and then as that juvenile comes forward, we have those funds. I have the contracts in place to adequately deal with that juvenile or juveniles' risk and needs that they present.
But over the course of this year, you're going to put together the committee and to start developing the plan?
Correct.
Is that the idea?
As outlined by SB 823.
Okay, and it has to be done by?
January 1st of 2022.
Okay. And
They want the certification now.
Yes. That date.
that we're going to do it, or that it's done?
That it's done.
But we haven't done it?
We haven't done it.
Okay.
That attestation too is due August 16th, I believe is the date at the bottom of it in the bold box. Simply stating that, yeah, we're going to do all the things it says in law.
But we should be able to finish by January 1st?
There's no excuse why I wouldn't finish by January 1st.
Okay, great.
I find it odd, that's the least caustic word I can use, that this coordinating council has no representation from the Board of Supervisors, our CAO, or anybody else, because we're ultimately responsible for the dollars. So frankly, I think we should appoint someone from this side that, whether it's our CAO or somebody else, that is on this coordinating council.
And you bring up a good point. I mean, in the AB 109, the adult realignment that occurred, there was a point in which the CAO was part of the executive committee members of that, and then that part was pulled back. So maybe that's in mirror to this one. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we have community members that have been involved in the correction side who probably have good knowledge of the area. So there'd be some people that can give good advice there. But hey, we've talked about this till blue in the face. It was just a bad decision to close down all of the youth facilities, and we're going to suffer because of this, as well as any of the other counties that still had youth correctional facilities like Pine Grove Camp.
Right.
Community's going to suffer.
And again, I saw the juveniles from the camp down here at the Jackson Creek clearing it this last week. I mean, there's much work, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of the work that they do. There's a whole host of things they do, and to lose that, it is tragic. Now, I don't know how that is going to manifest in this post-closure world, if they're going to continue to be able to have some sort of population up there. That's still in the works. I'm not a part of that, but it's my understanding that they're still trying to figure out potential ways to keep the Pine Grove camp going, whether it's juvenile population or the young offender population on the adult side. I don't know.
You know as well as I do that even on the adult side, they're shrinking.
Right.
They're closing facilities right now, and with the changes in the terms and the sentencing, they're out so fast. Even on the juvenile side, they were at the camp. They were lucky if they could keep them through one fire season. where previously it was, 3 to 4 fire seasons.
Right, you get that training, you get that trained individual. It's good to have them around for a year or two, so I agree.
Any other questions for Mark?
No.
On the board? Supervisor Crew?
Nothing from me, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any public comment? Any Zoomers? Okay.
Oh, wait,
One.
sorry.
Oh,
John got it just under the wire.
all right, John. We're gonna get to you. We're gonna unmute you here.
Go ahead, John, when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. John Hasenbo, Amador Fire Safe Council. Just want to point out that the Pine Grove camp provides a whole lot of work towards building fuel breaks in Amador County. If we lose them, we're in a world of hurt. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I do agree with the Supervisor Neto. I do agree with John, and sometimes you just scratch your head because it looks like the state's looking to shut down all the conservation camps. And if you've ever been to fire, those kids are out there busting their rears, doing a lot of work. I think it was a good program, but it looks like the state's pretty much mothballing it. But I see where, I think, the state of California's hiring a whole bunch more firefighters, so I think they could probably put the money towards the youth, and it'd probably been a lot better place to put the money than hiring more firefighters, because they already had them, and those kids were learning good skills. That's kind of looks like it's water under the bridge.
One last question, Mark. Is $250,000 per year enough for our needs?
We'll see.
Okay.
At current crime rates and current juvenile adjudications, it appears that it should be more than enough. But again, if we could have, 2 kids go out and do something pretty bad, and that doubles that commitment rate right off the bat. So it's just going to it's going to remain to be seen. But ultimately, of course, the judges are the ones that make those commitments, not me. So if they do a commitment to that secure track, if you will, that impacts our funding. That's why I say it's prudent to, if we don't use those funds, to have those funds roll forward in that fund in the event that we have either an uptick in juvenile crime or an uptick in commitments under the secure track.
Mark and I have talked extensively about the plan that he's got, and the problem that we all face is that the potential for a significant increase in funding in expenses is it's out there. And so anytime you can have it, the spending double, you've got to prepare for that. And that's what he wants to do. And I think that's a good plan.
And because the CAO mentioned it, currently we have contracts with Tuolumne, Placer, and El Dorado counties. Those contracts roughly are about $125 a day per juvenile to up to about $155 a day. Chiefs are currently, again, we're trying to wrap our heads around what this is going to look like, having these kids come to the counties, and what a secure track type juvenile would look like when they get committed. And chiefs are looking at anywhere between $400 and $600 a day.
Ooh.
Because of, the level of risk, the level of need that these kids that are in DJJ present, it needs to be addressed. We're not just going to warehouse them. That's not, it's just not done anymore, and it hasn't been done for years. So we have to have ways to rehabilitate them.
When we get a youth that you can't handle, they're the worst of the worst. I mean, they're the ones that go to other facilities and destroy them, and they don't even want them.
Correct.
So, we don't have those kind of facilities, and we're gonna have to contract out. You're right, it's gonna be expensive.
Right.
And probably once this thing starts taking effect, you're see those prices, those beds go up even more, I would think.
Potentially, and it really is gonna, there's gonna be a little bit of supply and demand, but at the beginning, I anticipate it's gonna be sticker shock for us when you consider what it currently costs for us to house these kids in these other facilities that I contract with. But at some point, it will get to a supply and demand issue, and maybe the contracts will come down a little bit, but maybe they'll go up. We don't know. It's just unknown at this point. At some point, we're gonna absorb whatever kids are left back at the state level. They can't keep the institutions open at the level that they're open as the population dwindles. So what is that number? Is it going to be 400, 300, 200? The counties are going to have to take those kids back. Now, that doesn't mean I have to take a juvenile back because I don't have one committed. but it's going to impact the beds at those other facilities that we use because now those kids will occupy those beds. So there's going to be supply and demand, there's going to be programming, there's going to be all kinds of costs, staffing, that it's really up in the air at this point. We just have to do the best we can and come up with a plan that makes sense for us.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, the funding seems like a lot of money, but look at the numbers, what the number you're telling me is 150 roughly to 220,000 a year for one kid.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you have one or no kids, you're probably going ahead. But if you have a pandemic and kids doing bad stuff, you could be going backwards real hard.
Right.
Yeah, you could handle one kid a year, but if it's two, it starts getting tight.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than that, then we might be in the hole. Any other board questions or comments? I was going to make comment on books, not bars in the prison law office, but I don't think what I have to say would be very kind. I don't think their advocacy for juveniles has been advantageous for the juveniles or the families. I mean, their movement has always been to get them closer to home. I remember when my wife taught school over at Gold Strike in Calaveras, and she took 5 of them down to the hearings when there was discussion on closing Preston. And the deputy director of corrections at that time made the statement, we needed to get the youth closer to home. And she looked at them and all 5 were shaking their head no. They were sent up to Calaveras County to get them away from the negative environment around gangs and other things like that, closer to home.
And it became important to have reentry services in place. That was really the key. And get them away, but then also have reentry services back. And that's what we did when we used other facilities and group homes that were up north or down south to try to eliminate that tie to the home, but not so much eliminate it, but put it on hold and then somehow get them reintegrated and ready to come back so that they can hit the ground running when they're here, rather than come back and find those same negative attributes of kids and things that they were exposed to.
Right, and those were the services that were being provided by Pine Grove when I left, is we were getting them those reentry services, making sure all of their Social Security needs were resolved, Social Security issues, and making sure they had a driver's license, making sure they had a place to go to, finding them employment before they ever got out. So at least you get them out with a little bit of a head start.
And the DJJ of 15 years ago is not the DJJ today, and the DJJ of 5 years ago is not the I mean, there is so much programming and so many positive things that these kids are exposed to when they are in custody. Yeah, they're in custody. They need to be because of their risk level, but there's so many programs, everything that you just mentioned, the fire suppression to all the schooling they get, is just, there's no comparison between the years of the past, again, going all the way back to the Youth Authority as to how it is now. And unfortunately, it's going poof and gone.
Yeah, it's the little successes that mean something though. And you don't know how many, those people that work with the juveniles, you don't know how many impacts sometimes because you never hear from them again. About 5-6 months ago, I had a message on Messenger out of the blue from a former ward at Pine Grove Camp thanking me for helping him through his years, and he explained where he's at now. So you at least see that some of them have made it, and some of them, yeah, they always got to watch their back. They're around negative environments, but ultimately it's in their mind to make the change.
I have those contacts all the time. I was just looking to see if Sean Krilich was still here, because his father, as you know, was a former chief probation officer of Amador County and ultimately Calaveras County. But all the time there's a juvenile that I have contact with. She's an adult now, but we had her on our caseload back then, and she always comments how appreciative she is of all the things that we did for her. Now, granted, she made some mistakes as an adult, but she has since turned the corner, we believe. But she always mentions Mike Krilich, Chief Mark Giannini, myself, and how thankful she is. So that being a part of the community, that all comes back to you. It's great.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Mark. And I guess we don't need to take any action today.
It's up to you.
And we'll look for the report and just wait and see.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, we have a public hearing at 10:30. Should we take a 7-minute break and then start the public hearing promptly at 10:30?
Good idea.
All right.
I'm gonna take the break myself.
Mm-hmm, please do.
Thank you, Mary.
And let's turn yours, put the table around.
Okay, so it's 10:30, and we'll move to our public hearing, item 6A. This is Surveying Department request to hold a public hearing and adopt the resolution of approval for a certificate of merger for Stephen C. Bateman. And the properties involved in the merger are lots 1A, 2A, and Lot B. And it's shown in Book 14 of maps and plats, page 68. Roger?
Good morning.
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 This is a rather straightforward merger, and I recommend that it be approved. It improves 2 lousy lots into 1 good lot. And we'd like to see that whenever we can. So I recommend that you approve it.
Well, it's 3 lots in total. It's 3 lots in total.
Yeah, I got so many of them here. Let me take a quick look.
So lot 1A, 2A, and B.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Okay. Supervisor Crew, you're muted right now, so you're saying no? Okay.
Looks like no.
It looks like you're saying no, shaking your head no. Okay.
It's no, he doesn't have anything else to say.
No, Mr. Chair.
All right. Is there any, let's see, we need to open the public hearing. So let's go ahead and do that.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing, and we have a second by Supervisor Forrester. Motion was by Supervisor Neto. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Forster,
Aye.
Chairman Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
Supervisor Brown.
Yes.
Move to approve the resolution of intention to approve the merger for Stephen C. Bateman.
Second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Forrester, second by Supervisor Neto to approve the merger. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Forster,
Aye.
Chairman Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
Supervisor Brown.
Yes.
Okay, motion, merger approved. So let's move on to item 6B. Surveying Department request to hold a public hearing and adopt the resolution of approval for a certificate of merger for Zivan and Gisela Radin. The properties involved in said mergers are lot 375 and 376 of Lake Comanche Village, Unit 1. And it's recorded in Book 3, subdivision recorded in Book 3 of subdivisions at page 8.
Yes, again, I recommend approval. This is back in old Unit 1, and one of the lots had trouble having adequate soils for waste disposal. So they're merging in it, and it makes her a nicer lot.
Any questions? So we'll open the public hearing. Any public comment?
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
So motion from Supervisor Forrester to close and second by Brown, to close. Supervisor Brown. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Forster,
Aye.
Chairman Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
Supervisor Brown.
Yes.
Okay. Could we have a motion to approve the merger?
So move.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Brown, second by Supervisor Forrester to approve the merger. Could we have a roll call vote?
Supervisor Oneto,
Aye.
Supervisor Forster,
Aye.
Chairman Axe,
Aye.
Supervisor Crew,
Aye.
Supervisor Brown.
Yes.
Okay, merger approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
There's a consent agenda. The consent agenda, has that already been heard? Does it come on next?
Yes, it's already been approved.
Thank you.
It normally, Roger's like, first thing, like, about,
Yeah.
send just like 9 o'clock roughly.
Okay.
Just a quick FYI, at the last board meeting, you had approved I think it was a abandonment of easement, pending an item of, from the Environmental Health Department that has been, completed. So, that item has been completely, resolved.
Okay, was that on consent then?
No, that wasn't something, I'm just telling you, because it was kind of undone at the last board meeting, so just bringing it all up to speed.
Is that gonna come back?
No.
To us? Okay,
Oh.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. All right. Moving back to our regular agenda, item 5D, this is consideration of a letter from the board to the U.S. Forest Service and others stating the board's position that recent fires have been horribly mismanaged and that the response by the U.S. Forest Service is unacceptable and cannot be repeated in the future. I'll open it up to our board for discussion.
Well, this is Supervisor Brown. I would like to bring into the fact that we have a new chief of the Forest Service, which is Randy Moore. And he was the regional chief of California, Hawaii, and Guam. And he's already put out a letter to all chiefs of the Wildland Fire Direction to prioritize fires and not manage them. They will be putting them out to fire, putting out a priority to put them out, especially under a PL5 direction.
What's a PL5? Is that like a fire severity hazard rating?
It's preparedness level is the definition of it. And as you go up in preparedness levels is what they bring on. It's like the Forest Service contracts all its tankers to be brought on. So they can't bring on the MAFS units from the military until all the tankers are brought online. So right now under PL preparedness level 5 right now, which is their highest thing, everybody is on board. You know, everybody that is possibly can put out fires is on board.
That's kind of dictated by weather when you say
the situation.
Yeah.
The situation, you know, there was 70 major fires on the west side of the
so weather, number of fires burning, just
it's everything.
Okay.
It's a whole algorithm. So for me is that I think they're already doing this. I think more or less from the Forest Service, but we need something to Congress right now to better fund the Forest Service to help with, you know, as we have Supervisor Netta and I both know that there's over 1,000 trees that are blown over this last winter, and none of them have been really touched. You know, none of them have been really taken out of the forest because they're now just sitting on the ground, roots up in the air.
Maybe tens of thousands of trees, probably.
Wow, I don't know. I didn't go count them. But you know, the biggest problem right now is the procedure that to get rid of that lumber out of the forest is going to take a while, and that shouldn't be. You know, we should be able to take care of our forests a lot better than we have. It's not the fire side that I'm really worried about as much as, you know, the fuels reduction, and that's where we need to be focusing on. I think myself, as Supervisor Neto always says, is that we need Bucky the Beaver, you know, to take care of our forest.
The mascot, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I say, yes, this Tamarack fire was started up on top of a ridge crest. It was not an easy access at that point in time. They were watching it, and then a wind event came in. So that's, you know, they, at the time of suspicion, that they suspected that it would go out on its own because it was on a rocky outclimb, except the fire spotted. You know, as soon as the winds came up, the wire spotted and went out of the area. I'm also a little disappointed that we didn't get into this conversation any of our local Forest Service representatives to attend this meeting. I tried calling Rick and he had another meeting to go to today. And if we want to bring this up again, I would think we'd want to bring, a Forest Service representative here to answer some of our questions.
I wouldn't mind holding this over to have those people here and get their input.
I would very much appreciate it myself.
I would hope, John Heisenbuttel would weigh in here from the Fire Safe Council and other people that have a lot of knowledge on this issue.
No, I think I'd be good to have the Forest Service here. To expand on Bucky the Beaver, I've mainly talked to CAL FIRE, whether it's down to EPA building or wherever I can, because I was real unhappy with them because they came up with a new mascot. I think it's called Captain Cow. It's a cool high-fiving mountain lion. And I've told them that may be good for LA, for PR, for CAL FIRE, but I said, we've got a problem in our forest. We've got too many trees, too many bushes, too many shrubs. I said, what you need is Bucky the Beaver. It's a cute little beaver, sharp teeth. And he goes around, his message is, cut down a small tree, cut down a bush, cut down a shrub, clean up your forest, save your wildlife, save your life. And I said, that's the message people need, because we've been on an environmental kick, and I see it. People, I love trees, don't get me wrong, but people go like, oh my gosh, you cut a tree down, you're killing nature. Well, by us not cleaning up and managing our forest, look at the mess we've been having for these last few years, and look at how much our forest has been, for 50, 80, 100 years, destroyed. It's gone. And what about the wildlife that we're supposed to be saving? We've got a huge problem. I was down at the UMRA meeting the other day. I think Greg Gillott was there, and I was probably maybe a little bit out of order because we're talking about a fuel reduction project. And they said, they were not going to take out any trees over 14 inches in diameter because they wanted to get consensus with everybody, and that's consensus. And I said, if you go in there and you don't take trees out bigger than 14 inches, don't even bother. Don't waste your time, because what's happening is people are saying, we're doing a fuel reduction project here, and look what a nice job we did. I told them, but you're fooling yourselves. I said, it's not going to do the job. If you don't take out more trees and open up the forest a little more, you're not really abating the fuel problem. And it's something I think, I've watched it. I grew up in the forest. I did logging. I remember 30 years ago talking to forestry people. I was down on Henley Canyon Road, and there's all kinds of dead trees down there and dying trees. And I told the Forest Service there's trees along the road that were a hazard to my health, because I was working in there. And finally, they said they had no money, no funding, no manpower. If they marked them, would I follow the hazard trees? And they call them hazard trees because they kill people. And I thought, well, that's a better option to have it follow me. So I cut these trees down, fell them, no charge to Forest Service, the hazard trees. And then I said, hey, some of them are still salvageable. Can I buy them? They said, no, that is spotted out habitat area. You can't go out in the forest. And I said, well, what about if I don't go in the forest? I just run a cable to them and pull them to this dirt road. They said no. And then I said, well, what about some of the trees are going to have to fall across the road? I said, can I buy the parts that fall on the road? They said no. So I got kind of half mad. I said, what do you want me to do with the pieces that fall on the road? They said, push them off the road. So I took a skidder and I pushed them off the road. And I looked at all the fuel, the trees that fell naturally, and that whole canyon that hadn't been thinned, hadn't been cleaned up. And I said, what you're doing, you're creating a firebomb in this forest, and someday a fire is going to come up this canyon. It's going to kill the whole damn forest. That was about 1990, I think, when I told them that. In 2005, along came the power fire, and there's all that fuel, and that spotted out habitat area they were saving, it got nuked like the rest of the canyon. And so what we're seeing didn't happen overnight, and I should probably say my comments when we see the Forest Service, but they're all blaming climate change now. That's part of it. The main thing is the amount of fuel. That's the problem.
Right. It is a combination of the two, but I agree. I think fuel reduction is important. Any other board questions or comments?
One more thing. Randy Moore, he's always been a great advocate and always been open. He's attended RCRC meetings during my time on RCRC. So I'm glad to have him in that place. He's very knowledgeable on the issues. His, order though would basically tell them though, when they see smoke to go take action and put the fire out. And that's what
Fire
every
out
other
right now.
agency does.
And that was-
I'm glad there's finally some common sense there.
Right, and so, you know, he got into office on August 1st, and his order was put out on August 2nd.
Good. That's good news.
So,
Well,
we're gonna bring this back next time? Was that the invite? Invite, Rick Hobson and others to participate?
And then we also have a new, forest ranger, El Dorado Forest Ranger too. I don't know, you know, I think he should be invited.
Okay. So why don't we hold our comments until then?
Mr. Chairman, we do have Mr. Heisenbuttel on Zoom, if you.
Okay. Did you wanna, he's got his hand up. Okay, public comment?
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to point out that Fire Safe Council believes it's a good idea to have this as an agenda item for your next meeting or whenever, and we'll be happy to participate. Randy Moore is a good pick for Chief of the Forest Service. He's one of our own. Something we need to talk about with the Tamarack fire is right place, right time, right conditions. Forest Service should have never let that be a managed fire. They should have put it out immediately. So Randy's on the right track. Anyway, look forward to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, John.
I must say I agree 100% with Mr. Heisenbuttel. One thing we should be very careful about is saying no fire in the forest, because in order to clean up these forests, we're either gonna have to masticate them, masticate log, i.e. thin them out, and fire is gonna be something we're gonna have to use. But not when we've had almost 30 days of 100-degree weather. You don't wanna have fires burn on their own.
Well, the other thing, the U.S. Forest Service has typically ignored the weather and forecasts. When I worked back for corrections, we were on a fire up in the Loyalton area where they did a control burn with a forecast of heavy winds coming in. Well, 30 houses burned down after that, and you never saw a forest vehicle, U.S. Forest vehicle after that, because they would have been killed on site. People were so angry at them.
Okay, so why don't we, hold our comments until then? All right, go ahead, Sean.
So I'm just gonna agree with most of what's been said here. This is Sean Michael Krilitich, and especially with Supervisor Oneto, that I think we got to stop looking at this global crisis and start realizing that our actions here are related to this global crisis and are driving this global crisis. All the smoke in the air should be a good indication that we're not caring for this place in the way that we could be. And I think here in Amador County, we need to recognize the comment that I made earlier, that 96% of the Earth's heat cycle is driven by water. That's not by carbon dioxide. It's by water, and we got to thin these forests out. And maybe the issue is that we're not doing enough for the rest of our biological community. Maybe one thing that could be thought about when you reconvene on this topic is holding workshops for what can be done. Because not only do we have the Forest Service issue, but we have a lot of small private land holdings that need to have a lot of treatment done. And I also just wanted to end by thanking this board for your letter of support back in May for the Resource Conservation District grant that is looking to treat about a 3,000 acre area between where we are now and Pine Grove. And I also want to point out that I'm a little frustrated with the governor's office not only for overstating the amount of work that was done this last year with those grant programs and allocations, especially the CAL FIRE that only treated less than 12,000 acres as opposed to what the governor said was 90,000. But also we were supposed to know whether we received this grant already through the Resource Conservation District, and we don't. But thank you again for your support, and let's keep working on this because I think it's a critical issue to our community. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, moving on. And do we have enough time to do 5E, you think? Okay, let's, although Michelle's not here.
I could handle.
You want to handle that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So this is the, from Code Enforcement, discussion and possible action relative to adoption of a resolution formally requesting an extension of the Amador County Abandoned Vehicle Abatement, AVA, program for an additional 10 years beginning May 1st, 2022, and ending April 30th, 2032.
So, Supervisors, California Vehicle Code Section 9250.7 authorizes the Board of Supervisors in each county to approve this $1 fee per registered vehicle in the county. After, if you have the agreement of a majority vote by the cities that represent a majority of the incorporated population. But we do have, in your packet, you have resolutions from all 5 cities. So we meet that threshold. So a resolution by the board that's in your packet would authorize the fee under the statute.
Okay, any discussion from the board?
I think it's the right thing to do. The citizens have shown in the past that they supported it, and hopefully they'll do that by vote again in the future.
Okay. Any public comment? Oh, I forgot to ask Chairman Crew, any comments from you?
No, I concur with Supervisor Forster's comments.
All right.
I would move then the resolution continuing the abandoned vehicle abatement program and the dollar vehicle fee for another 10-year period pursuant to the California Vehicle Code sections and the Senate Bill 106.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Supervisor Forster, second from Supervisor Brown to approve the resolution adopting the AVA fee for another 10 years. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Onetto?
Aye.
Supervisor Forster?
Aye.
Chairman Axe?
Aye.
Supervisor Crew?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think we have enough time to approve the minutes from July 27th, 2021.
I went through the minutes in our packet. I did not go through the second set of corrections that was sent, so I'm going to submit my corrections. I understand there's been a change with the correct public hearing put in on the new minutes, but also the Jess hearing needed to be put back on there. Remember, it was
that was put in.
It was an addendum, so I'll submit my corrections on the rest of the minutes. Most of them were minor, so I appreciate, Jennifer, you taking care of that.
So you're making a motion to approve with corrections?
Yes.
Okay. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, motion by Forster, second by Brown to approve. Could we have a roll call vote?
Supervisor Onetto?
Aye.
Supervisor Forster?
Aye.
Chairman Axe?
Aye.
Supervisor Crew?
Aye.
And Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
So minutes are approved, and Although we're early, we can go ahead and, can we start the, Board of Equalization meeting, or do we need to wait until 11 sharp?
I think you need to wait until,
11 sharp, okay.
unless,
All right, Jim, we're just gonna twiddle our thumbs here for 5 minutes.
well, I mean, we can, apparently we can start a little earlier.
So those, Board of Equalization hearings, they're more like court hearings, so it's open to the public, but there's no public comment, there's no, so.
Okay.
If the parties are here and if they wanna start, then you can call it.
Let's do it.
Okay, Jim, are you ready to go? Okay. Why don't you come on up and, okay, so this is a Board of Equalization meeting, Tuesday, August 10th. Approval of the agenda.
Second?
Motion by Forrester, second by Brown. Could we have a roll call on that, please?
Supervisor Onetto?
Aye.
Supervisor Forster?
Aye.
Chairman Axe?
Aye.
Supervisor Crew?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Yes.
Okay, under stipulations, 1A, this is stipulation of values and appeals of years from 2012 to 2016, Specialty Granules, LLC, and all the APNs are listed there, so. Jim?
Hello, Board. Jim Rooney, Amador County Assessor. I wanted to ask maybe Greg a question. Do we need to do a swearing in? Which we usually do in.
Only if you're providing evidence.
Okay. All right, the assessor's office has a stipulation, which is a rather large one, concerning mineral rights properties. And we have a mineral rights appraiser who is here today. It's Randy Berthoff, and he's going to, actually, I guess you guys might want to just vote to approve the stipulations, but if you don't, and want to ask questions, he's here to explain the process and answer any questions.
Okay,
I do have
Yeah.
some questions.
okay, Supervisor.
Likewise.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we have one, two, three, 4, 5 very large reductions in the assessed value. Most of them go from about the $9 or $10 million range down to about $6 million.
Same parcel, I think.
Well, that's my question. Is it?
It is, it's the mineral rights parcel. My name's Randy Berthoff, if you didn't hear from Jim. It's the mineral rights parcel that was the big reduction. There was a small reduction in a land value of $150,000.
And there was a small increase in a couple others.
Depending on the year, yes.
Why was there the big reduction in the mineral rights?
The big reduction was, if you're familiar, is that the property they've been leasing the land for a long, long time out there. They bought the lease, they bought the land. Jim took at that time and reappraised the mineral rights and the land at that time, back in 2011. And the mineral rights shouldn't have been reappraised at that time because under property tax rules, the minerals were always being assessed to SGI, which was ISP a few years prior to that. They changed their name, as if they were the owner in fee. We've always assessed SGI all along as the owner of the property, so that the mineral rights aren't subject to change of ownership when they bought the royalty interest out. Now, if somebody comes in and buys out SGI, that would be then that would be a reappraisable event. And in 2002, ISP, which is the predecessor of SGI, did buy the operation that was leased and everything, and we reappraised it at that time, the mineral rights.
But now, same question as Supervisor Onetto, have the minerals been expended to the point that there's less value there? I'm looking at valuing the property based on the mineral rights, and, it seems like there's still a lot of minerals there to be mined.
There is. There's like 25 years left still.
Then why would the assessed value be going down by $4 or $5 million?
Well, because Jim took the purchase price and allocated that to, and he allocated the $10 million to the mineral rights, or I think it was about $10 million to the mineral rights. And the mineral rights, the purchase price included the land, some land across the street that they weren't even leasing. And as part of the purchase, there was 12 different agreements where they could all share properties, and they had, because of the Newman Ridge Quarry, they have the right, SGI gave them the right to use the roads and the railroad access and stuff. At the same time, SGI has a right to use some of the Edwin Land's property to put their waste and in the ponds there. And so the base year on the mineral rights is really low because it was established back in 2002 when they originally bought it. But the market value is, depending on the year, is around $5-6 million.
So I think what he's saying is it was a mistake to reappraise it at the last sale. So they're just resetting that.
Yeah.
Not really an adjustment down. It's a correction.
Is there like data or something like that that shows how much mineral deposits are there and how you assess that?
I got, I don't think this was part of your package. Do I have to be sworn in if I'm gonna give them sheets or anything?
Only need to be sworn if there's two parties sort of providing contrary evidence, but if,
I don't think.
Because there's a stipulation at this point.
Yeah.
If the stipulation isn't approved, then we'll probably have to reset this anyway.
This sheet shows the parcels for each year. It shows the whole, the recommended value and then the reduction.
So you take basically the bare land value and then back that out of the purchase price to say the rest was minerals? Is that kind of how it works?
Well, we had to adjust a little bit because the big argument was that they thought that some of the value was for the right to use part of Edwin Land's to store their waste. The problem is that the property that they have, there's not a lot of excess room, and they got about 52% of the rock that they need.
Yeah, I know.
And so they have to put it. They're refilling the ponds over in Edwin Land. That's why they bought the stuff across the street too, because eventually when they fill up the Edwin Lands, they're going to start putting the stuff across the street. That'll
Sir,
take it.
can we go back on the microphone, please?
Yeah.
Maybe you can repeat that last part again about, so it's on the record.
Okay. Part of the argument is when they filed their appeals was they were arguing that there was a huge value that they paid for the right to store their waste over on the Edwin Land's property. Because their parcels don't have a lot of room for all the waste that the operation is creating. And so they've been, over the years, it wasn't a problem because the Edwin Lands and the Howards, and they let them store it over there. They've been storing it on their properties for years. And then it went to Edwin Lands. But the problem was when they bought the land, they got this right also to continue to store their waste over on Edwin Lands.
Now, when you say the waste, is that also the overburden?
The overburden they save because they reclaim the pit. It's the waste that goes, they have two different, there's the overburden, then there's a cap rock that they mine off the top. That's not, the quality is not sufficient to make roofing granules. So Edwin Lands agreed to buy that, and they're buying the cap rock that they segregate at the mine every year. And they're required to remove so much by your county permit because the problem is it's growing so fast, the overburden and the cap rock, that they didn't have any room. And so Edwin Mines is buying the cap rock and using it for construction aggregates. And then below that is what they're mining for the roofing granules. And the amount that the rock that goes to the plant, only 48% is usable, 52% is waste when they crush it into such a small, minute particle that they use for asphalt shingles.
So, so the cap rock itself has some value, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it does, and it's included in my value.
Okay. So that's part of the mineral rights, is what
It's
you're
part of
saying?
the mineral rights, yeah.
So if it's changed by roughly half, then
Well, you have to remember.
then the cap rock itself is half of the minerals that are available?
Well, it's not half in that the land value, the surface value, is about 2.5 million or so, in addition to the mineral rights. You know, when they bought the thing, what they bought was the mineral rights and the land surface.
But the land surface really isn't changing in value much.
No.
Right? The real change is
The real change is in the mineral rights. Yeah.
So half of,
Yeah.
it seems like to me, half the minerals are not what it used to be, or it's not.
Half the value that Jim assigned to it is not there. The thing is, he signed it off of that sales price allocation, but the sales price allocation included a bunch of different things. One of the things is they had the plant out there, and if they didn't buy the land, then they're gonna have to remove the plant and everything too. They did have a few years left in their lease, but Edwin Lands wanted to sell it. They're selling off everything as much as they can.
So, but, I mean, these are the numbers, but is there an assessment of how much mineral is actually there? Minerals are actually there?
Yeah. We got reports from SGI, their geology reports and everything, and it gives us the reserves.
Say how many tons or
Yeah.
cubic meters are there based on some kind of?
They go by tons.
Do you do like do you do some kind of sonic analysis?
We do on the mineral rights, it was a royalty income approach. We tried to get more data from, that's why this took so long, was we've been trying to get data through the attorneys for years, and we couldn't get anything. And we tried to do a total income approach where you take how much the product sells for minus all the operating expenses. We couldn't get any of that information from them. They wouldn't give us any of the sales price information or any of the operating cost information. So we had to do a royalty income approach. And we had, at the time that they bought the thing, they signed a new lease for the cap rock with Edwin Lands. And so let me hand this out. This is the royalty income approach for each of the years. I actually had to go back to 208 because we had to do an adjustment from originally, the last time the value was set was in 207, there was a stipulation. And so we had to go back to 208 to actually carry the base year numbers forward to the even though only 212 through 16 was under appeal.
So so this is the amount of material you're quarrying?
Yeah.
So, so quarry aggregate is what's being sold off for construction aggregate. And then the granule is the actual high quality stuff that's used for the
granule is what's going to the SGI plant.
Okay.
And then the aggregate is what Edwin Lands is buying the cap rock and using it for construction aggregates.
And then-
Now, the, construction aggregates or the Edwin lands, some years they've mined, some years they haven't. Some years they had to catch up because they have to have a minimum of 100,000 a year. And so some years they may do 300,000 or 400,000 and then they don't do anything for a couple of years.
So the quarry royalty income, that's money that's paid to SGI
Well,
for the cap rock?
the cap rock, yeah, that would be, well, the quarry royalty income includes all the rock. But they're only getting a royalty from Edwin Lands for the cap rock. You know, they're not paying themselves.
Yeah.
Now, Edwin Lands was getting a royalty before they sold it to him. Edwin Lands was getting a royalty from both, but now SGI is getting a royalty from Edwin Lands on the cap rock.
So the royalty really is just on the cap rock.
That's correct.
So
But we still have to
what is
impute a royalty on the granule rock. It's just that they're not, if they were leasing it, we would have one, but because they own it.
so shouldn't the approach also include the sales of the granule rock as well?
Well, it is. The total quarry production,
Mhm.
that's both the granule rock and the
Correct.
cap rock. And then times the dollar, and that gives you the total quarry royalty income.
Oh, so total quarry royalty income includes both the cap rock sales as well as the granule?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. On the first page, 497,287, that's the total rock from the quarry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have this royalty income, and then how do you convert that to an actual value?
It's a discount approach. 11% discount rate is what I used. Because it's an annual income, we use a mid-year discount factor. They're getting it monthly, but we use it on a mid-year basis. That's what you do for mining. And then you discount that income year to year. Like the 497 goes to 472, add it up, and you get down to the 5.926.
Right. Why does it drop so much for the later years where, you know, it's...
Well, the reserves are going down. They're mining,
So, but I mean, isn't this really on production of material?
it's based on how much is there, and then how much they're gonna get year to year to year. Some of the years, during this period, production was way down, so it takes longer to get all the reserves.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think as far as we do mineral deposits, if the minerals are in the ground and if they've not been looked at and quantified what's there, you just got a pasture land that may have 10 million ton of rock on it. They don't pay on mineral rights on that pasture land, but if they go in there and core drill it and do an appraisal or come up with like what's there, then you have to then appraise those mineral rights. It's like a company goes in, starts production, and say we have 10 million ton of reserves. At that point, that'd be a taxable deposit, correct?
Well, if they go in and buy it with the idea that they're gonna mine it, and everybody, the buyer and the seller both know there's minerals, so they may not have...
They're valuing the minerals, yeah.
They may not have quantified them, and they may not have a lot of value, but they do pay something for them, if they know that. Now, they have to go through the long permitting process. Sometimes takes 10 years, you know, to do that. And then they have to go through the core. A lot of times, most of the time when they get ready to buy a property that they're gonna mine, they've already, during the stages of buying the thing, they've gone out and cored it a little bit.
In other words, if it's bare land,
yeah,
and nobody's went and put a value on those minerals, they just bought bare land.
Yeah.
It's not really, you don't really appraise the mineral deposit.
Well, we allocate a portion of the sales price, to the minerals, but generally it's not very much.
Yeah, but here they went in and quantified how much is there, what the reserves are, and at that point, then that becomes, taxable.
Yes,
asset.
they've been mining there for a long time. You know, originally when it was first mined, they were using it for, railroad ballast years ago. Then back in 1999, SGI's predecessor, who they bought it from, started building the plant and had tested it, and they started doing it for granules. And then SGI came in and bought it a year or two later. And so they've been doing it since 2002. And they do an annual review every year of the geology, how much they have there, you know, limits as far as depth of mining and everything, and how much they mined last year, and they deduct, and then there's reports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really what you're basing this on.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So as you mine the material, you're estimating how much is left, and therefore that's what your value is?
That's correct. Every year it's what's left.
How much did you start with to begin with? Is that on here?
Well, when they
Is there
first,
an estimate of that?
back in 2002 when they bought it,
Mm-hmm.
I might have something.
Because, you know, I understand you can measure how much is being taken out, but how do you know how much you had to begin with as a point of reference?
I think they core drilled it
Yeah, they,
for what deposits there, and then also the permit tells them how, their use permit says how wide they can go and how deep they can go, and that would basically kind of give you your numbers. I think.
So that gives you your volume.
yeah, I don't have it back that far. But, when they bought it in 2011, when they bought the lease out, they already had been operating it, and they already knew what the reserves were, and they had given us that.
By the reserves, that would go.
When you say what the reserves are, is the amount of material.
That's the amount of material. Now, when they give us the reserves, what they're talking about is only the material that's suitable for granule rock.
Right.
They're not concerned with cap rock, because that's kind of a waste to them, you know? So what they've done is delineate the material that's suitable for granule rocks, and that's their reserves.
Okay. So that's a reliable number then,
Yes, I looked at their
had
maps,
back?
and I've looked at, you know, they give you a 3D diagram and everything, and how they did it, and how many acres, and because it's a quarry, they got different levels.
So
that they mine.
when they said 3D diagram, that's based on these cores that they drilled, or some kind of
Yes, yes.
imaging method, or?
I think most of the mining companies all have sophisticated computer programs that do it all for them. They put in all the coring information, and then it does it for them, depending on the permit conditions and the levels of the different. There's like 3 levels that they mine. You know, they step down in this quarry.
Okay. All right, so the royalty income approach, Jim, you're familiar with this?
The royalty income approach is the predominant method used for like sand and gravel, normal construction aggregates.
Okay.
The total income approach is normally used for industrial type minerals.
I'm familiar that it is one of the approaches to be used. That's not something that I'm terribly familiar with using.
Okay.
It's in the assessor's handbook.
But you've looked at the numbers and all that, and they make sense to you?
Yeah, they do. And when we originally got that sales price, what was it, 12 million, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we weren't given the data that it didn't include some of those mineral rights, so we included them back then. We used a residual approach. We gave a value to the land, the surface value, with a residual to the mineral rights. But if I'm correct, the mineral rights had been essentially, they were already owned by the SGI.
Yeah, they weren't subject to a change of ownership reappraisal.
So we were essentially, I guess you could say for a while there, we were, double assessing the, mineral rights.
You weren't double assessing, you were just,
Assessing, yeah, so anyway.
you had one number on it, but.
We didn't have the data till later on, that Randy received.
I think our biggest heartburn is when you see an assessment go down by this much, but
Yeah.
hearing the justification, sounds like it's correct. I mean, that's why you were hired as an expert in the area.
Yeah, the 10 million or the 9.9 that he originally put on it was he just took the total price and allocated it. And that's why it wasn't a basis for the mineral rights. And there was some justification that they paid more for it because they would have to move if they didn't. They had the plan already operating, plus they got the rights to utilize that other property next door.
Let me ask you, you said originally there was a 25-year estimate for life of this plant?
Well, the cash flows that I'm running are running 25, 26 years depending.
So is that an estimate on their part, or is it a very reliable number of the lifespan?
That's my estimate, based on what they've given me as reserves. Now, for some reason, they went back and got a permit extension, and I've never gotten any justification from the planning or anybody. And the same thing, I think they tied it in with the Newman Ridge quarry, and they got the permit extended, I think, till 2074, which was like 50 years.
So that's
or
my
more.
question. Is it a 50-year life, or, because that would change all of the assumptions then, I would think.
Yeah, that would, except I don't see that at this point. And under their permitting conditions now, they may be able to expand the permit or the pit eventually, but they have some water issues with protected species and stuff like that, and they'd have to go through the permitting process to do that. And it doesn't look like they can expand it a whole lot, even if they do. So I don't see how they can do it. But the reason why I think they did it was to tie it in with that railroad that's down there by their plant, because when the quarry is they anticipate using that. And I don't know if you guys are aware, that sold recently, the quarry.
No, it's not, I think Vulcan bought it, right?
Vulcan. Yeah, and they intend to, and they bought property down in Galt at the railroad spur, and they intend to utilize that railroad because it's too far to haul. The problem is there's lots of rock up here, but you don't have the big population base like they do in Sacramento, and they're running out in Sacramento. And so they're trying to get it down to South Elk Grove area. And so.
Now, you're saying SGI doesn't have much room to expand the pit?
Not too much because of all the environmental issues that they have.
So I think they're looking to expand it, maybe they might try to mitigate the environmental maybe.
They might, yeah.
Okay. You know, a question I had, so the property, it looks like sold for about 10 million?
12 million.
Or 12 million?
Yeah.
And, so if you're dropping the minerals by roughly 5 million, does that drop the overall assessment or just the minerals?
It's just the minerals. The value that we actually have overall on them, you know, because majority of the value is in the equipment and the plant and everything else. We have in the first year, we have 27 million on them total. You know, this is just the one parcel that is set. The mineral rights are separately assessed. And we have 27 million in 212, 27 in 213, 26 in 214. It drops to 25 and then 23. So we have a lot more than the $12 million.
No, I know that as far as that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay, any other board questions or comments?
Still, on the lifespan, I understand if they expand it, they would have to get additional permitting done?
Yes, And then we'd pick that up. At that time, we would, our values would increase for the new reserves.
So today, that would not affect this assessment at all?
No, that hasn't been considered because the likelihood of them, we don't know if they're gonna do it and whether they can get the permits and whether they can mitigate and all that. Once they get into the permitting process and we see that it's a go, then we would add for new reserves.
But wouldn't it affect your assumptions today that if the lifespan is 50 instead of 25, wouldn't it affect your projections as far as the loss of aggregate per year? The diminishing aggregates would be less than expected, so it would affect your values then, wouldn't it?
Well, year to year, we take off what they actually produce. And so, you know, like on my cash flows, during this period, their production was down. It's come way back up now, but I escalated it to bring it back up to a normal level, what they'd historically been doing at 5% a year until I got to that level, and then I went down back to 2.5%.
There's nothing in your calculation though that uses the life of the plant. It's always actual.
Well, it's based on the reserves that they've provided, and that the reserves, once they run out of reserves, they'll quit mining.
Well, I guess that's what I'm trying to balance.
Yeah,
Is the reserves and that you're plugging into your equations on a 25-year life versus maybe a 50-year life, but we won't know that until they pursue those permits in the future, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we asked them for all their budgets and their forecast and that stuff to see that those things will lead you to the idea of what they plan to do in the future. We can never get it from them.
Well, that's proprietary, but that's going to help them hold their value down too.
Yeah. I mean, it's proprietary, but the assessor has the right to it. But that's why the attorneys, why it took, so they were fighting back and forth. And I don't know if you're aware that the attorney that, your county attorney passed away like a couple months ago.
Well, it's been about 50 years. I'm not surprised.
Brett Price. And so he was working on it, and we were up to the point about having to subpoena him. But then we decided to just try to get it done with what we could because it was getting so old. And then we thought this was a reasonable method.
Okay. I give up.
Okay. Supervisor Brown, any comments? Supervisor Crew?
No comments. It seems to me it's just a correction of maybe we made a mistake in 12 through 6 and the 16 period, and now it's come back. But it sounds like we just overassessed the mineral rights for a 5-year period based on they were included in the sales price when they shouldn't have been. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other further questions or comments? Is there consensus amongst the board?
I'd move to approve the stipulations.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
So a motion from Supervisor Forrester, a second from Supervisor Onetto to approve the stipulations as is. Could we do a roll call vote?
Supervisor Onetto?
Aye.
Supervisor Forster?
Aye.
Chairman Axe?
Aye.
Supervisor Crew?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Okay, and with that, we are done with our Board of Equalization meeting. And coming back to the Board of Supervisors meeting, we are adjourned. To closed session. Yes, I'm sorry. We're not adjourned. We're going to go back into closed session. So Supervisor Crew, we'll contact you in a moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.